Welcome. Hi there. Hope everyone's had a great week to another Traders Community podcast. And what a week it's been. Just wow. Hasn't been one of these for a while as far as oil and natural gas goes together. Welcome punters, traders, investors, and of course, dribblers everywhere. So we're going to talk about two major parts of our strategy that we go through all the time and how that played out well. And part A, of course, is the energy sector, so all the length in there. And part B, of course, is our dribbler shorts, which also have been very well. And it's because of the pure power of the energy markets right now, namely oil and natural gas, that you've got both sectors working together. You don't often see that. So that's been quite a spectacular week there and very pleasing. So we're going to talk about those stocks. We're going to go quickly through the jobs report, bond market, the matters affecting us out there, obviously inflation and all that sort of thing and how that's being affected. We have the glorious Madavi here, who's still actively trading because there are markets open, even though it is Friday afternoon. And we got Volatility Radar here, who's been spot on with VIX, as you know, and just nailed that, which has been very helpful. And also Meta Johnny, who has really pulled some great trades out this week. So be sure to join us. Subscribe so you don't miss these podcasts. If you can see last night, very rewarding to those who are on. Like us. Put in the chat there if you're wanting to see things and talk about things and stuff like that. So about further ado, from the heart of Texas, today's theme is black gold Texas tea. There's an old saying, don't mess with Texas. So let's get into that on a serious note. So without further ado, so just before we go, here we are at the closing. We're a little bit after the market's closed, so this is where we're trading now. The WTI oil is trading at 114.96, just under, let's just call it 115. The S&P went out at 43.24 in cash. Russell just under 2,000. Natural gas just under $5. It did trade over $5 today at 4.94. The S&P, we just went through. The NASDAQ 13.09 right now, and volatility sitting around 31.70 on the VIX. That got as high, volatile day there, basically 30 and a half up to 33 and a quarter, and back down just below the mid section there. So let's start off roughly with let's go through what happened first today, shall we? Overall, before we get in the stock market, let's have a quick look at it. So the NASDAQ, as has been for most of the week, if you recall at the start, or was it next week? I can't really remember now. It's such a blur. But the NASDAQ was up 3 days in a row. So, and the Russell was the strongest out of all that. So that brought all the dribblers out of nowhere, basically knocking anyone that was short, anyone that was real, I guess, long or short, and pumping the stuff they've been trying to get out of since Adam was a boy. So the end result, we move forward. The S&P now is down 10% from its all-time high. The NASDAQ is 18% from its all-time high. So these are big levels. As far as the final numbers today, the Dow closed down 180 points. The S&P closed down 35 points. Russell down 31 and NASDAQ down 224. For the week, as I mentioned just then, the NASDAQ was the shocker, down 2.78, and Russell down 1.9, Dow down 1.3, SPUs was the strongest out of 1.28. Now, from a trading point of view, or a bull point of view, that's not what you want to see. You don't want a slowly drifting down market because it means people get comfortable with the market falling. So if you're long, right, you say, oh, okay, I'll buy a few more, because you're not feeling the pain trade, as they say. So that's an important thing to notice. And also these little bounces keep getting the shorts out. So we've had a lot of vicious bounces, but nothing is really new. We have a war going on. We have massive inflation. That isn't new, So the war's, I guess, a week old now, but still none of it's new, right? So it's interesting. So the way it's reacting is still very hopium. Now, what's keeping the S&P up is whilst a lot of the NASDAQ stocks are getting hurt, energy's just like a beast right now, right? So if we look at that individually, let me have a quick little look at that. But the energy sector was up 2.9%. And also, on a day like today that's steady, it's not just energy, it's also defensive stocks, what I think Radar mentioned yesterday. So we had utilities were also up today, real estate was up, healthcare was up, and consumer staples were up, right? So those safer bets, if you like, are giving support. So it's not that's not a total rush on everything. Now, obviously, if it can stay stable, also by the same token, it does bring confidence back to the market. So there's two ways of looking at that. The worst hit today were the heavily weighted financials, which we traded through that triple, FAZ, whatever you want to call it. JP Morgan, Citibank hit. I noticed hitting 52-week lows. The other bad sector was information technology, down minus 1.8. So we know all that too with the social media, etc. Broadcom was up because they had earnings yesterday. Costco was down. That's kind of your main earnings plays from yesterday. Okay, so let's look at the jobs. So where we put our short back on today, and we pretty much just stayed short all day while we're trading oil and gas. We'll go through that. Yes, it was a much better jobs thing. Number was 678 NFP versus 400 expected by Goldman. But that's old news. Yes, it's just a month away, but since then, we've got a worse energy situation, inflation situation. We've got a war going on in the Ukraine, and all these other things, right? So you've got to take that into account. The unemployment rate was down to 3.8. Now, if America becomes isolated or even benefits, then all of this is good and true. But you can see what's unsettling the market, and particularly the weekend coming up. Hourly earnings were down to unchanged. Now, in an inflation world, that's not a good thing. You're getting less money and you're paying more. So, simple maths, right? The participation rate rose just a little bit, 62.3. So let's have a quick look at the bond market, and then we'll get into everything. So bonds have been toing and froing between safe haven and inflation all week, right? As a safe haven play all week. So at the end of the week, the biggest losers this week were the 10 and 5 years. The 5 was down 26 basis points for the week, and the 10-year down 27. The 3 was down 17, and the 30 was down 15. The best performer was the 2-year, which was only down 10. Now, the relevance of that is that's what measures your Federal Reserve, your FOMC meeting, right? So we had Powell up before the Senate and the House this week, the Banking Committee. He's basically saying, look, we're going to go 0.25%. So that's factored into that, obviously. He reasserted, and I don't know why all these dribblers, etc., just don't get this through their skull, as he said last year, that he can't affect inflation for supply. It's a pretty simple concept, right? Very, very simple concept. We can see that. And we were all up on all this before Ukraine. So let's not just get caught in the political discourse, so this is all on that. So we've had this pressure game for a long time, and we've surmised over why, and then there's a completely misreading of the situation by President Biden, and we see that all the time. We see people that absolutely have no idea of the situation in Eastern Europe, the Baltics and Scandinavia, all over Twitter commenting and all this sort of thing. It's an intricate thing, and it's gone on for a long time, and those that of us that have any ties from that area have spoken about this at length. There's a lot of cross plays, and it's not just simply evil this and bad this. There's a lot of been a lot of interference over the times, and I wouldn't say this is a war with Russia. It's more Putin's war for the most part, but as far as that element goes, but you've got to understand that. So I see some just ignorant comments, but like everything, everyone knows everything, and that's why we call them dribblers. So without further ado on that, we've seen strong numbers out of a lot of countries, and inflation actually pulling back before this week, because remember, they're old numbers, right? So obviously countries like Australia are benefiting from commodities, the US benefiting from commodities, Canada, the producers that I guess aren't under sanctions would be the best way to put it, right? So I think I pretty well covered everything there roughly. So safe havens, and we'll go through the charts, and if you got any questions, shoot them to us. Gold had another good week as you'd expect. Copper finally broke out nicely. So remember, we put on that play about a week ago. Actually, it was a week ago to the day, I think, on FCX, etc. And copper, so that worked out really well. Gold we put on a few weeks ago. That worked out really well. So let's get into it. So here we go. So let's start off with what should we start off with, guys? The SPUs.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The old SPUs. So it would help if I had to. So we're being crazy busy today, and I got to, just been one of the best weeks, and it's kind of been a good year. Just strategy and all that. So pretty happy. Everything's moving more than what one would expect. But there's reasons for that. Okay, let's start off with weekly. And remember, these will go into the weekly report. So, basis of that. If you recall, at the start of the week, we put our short back on the S&P. And that's been our core short. And it was on its 50 DMA and confluence almost at the top of that channel. So that's on our weekly basis. Pretty cut and dried. You know where you're wrong. Obviously above here. So that's worked out well. It has been a slow day. It's been held up by the weekly cloud. So if we move on to daily, we can see that same spit. So you can see that it got back up there to test the weekly. So actually, if you were scalping it around a bit, you actually had 2 bites of the cherry on the short side. Pretty clear where our base is underneath here. And remember, we started off with war and bombings and all that sort of thing, right? So there's pure fear out there, but there's also this big nonchalant, greedy factor that you get in a bull market, and in the modern era, everyone's all about themselves, right? So that's reflected in these stock markets too. The models, on the other hand, are just not the models. The algorithms are very cold and just picking it up nicely. So that's why the Nova Wave part of what we do works out and keeps you honest. It's very clinical and correct, stops you from getting too emotional. But you don't want to lose your the feel and art you have from experience on these markets. So anyway, we broke back through that channel and we've closed underneath it, but we did we closed under Cajun, pink, but above Tankin. So we are in flag territory. So with a high vol, this has been a option seller's market, as we talked about yesterday. Okay, if we break that down a little bit on the 240, you can see basically we're testing previous lows, and we fail. We test previous highs, we fail. So very much a reflection of that. And with vol this high, normally this kind of movement, you wouldn't be getting vol this high because it's not following through. Okay, let's have a quick look at that Dow. We have this megaphone pattern on the weekly. We closed inside it, well inside it actually, but still inside the cloud. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at there. If we look at the NASDAQ and well, let's look at the Russell first, and we'll bring on Madavi on for the NASDAQ. He's just got a few positions here. Where's old Rusty? So Rusty today. So if you crawl yesterday, Madavi pretty well got a nice big upswing and a big downswing. I haven't dicked around in that index, but we've been a heavy seller. We'll go through them individually of a lot of the dribbler stocks that are in this. And a lot of them really have been great rewards that way. And significantly, the market isn't short a lot of these because we're able to not only borrow them, but they're free to short. So they went from... So that tells you the market's very long of these, or they're averaging or giving up, but they're not short. There are obviously shorts out there. But remember, I always said, if the only reason you own something is because they're short, that is not the reason to open it. And hopefully that got through to a lot of people. Probably didn't to everyone, but what's that saying? You can lead the horse to water, but you can't force it to drink, right? 1 sec, sorry guys, I just lost that. There we go. So we can see that churning around. So as an index itself, it was very strong. So the reason we're talking about this at this point of time is these markets are kind of the ones that people are all caught long in, and once they get confidence again to buy them, it goes up a little bit. And because they're so underwater and they're so used to just buying the dip, they actually don't take the profit, right? Does that make sense? So they get caught with it even further. And that's what we're seeing. But you always got to be on the lookout, as I said. Just trying to bring us up here. For that same ilk to be pushing them up, right? So let's now look at this on a longer term basis. That's just today. So actually, we just remember this on Russell. This is our big line in the sand, this big pink one. So we'd need to get over that and hold above it to actually signal we're going to a next level. But you can see last week we've had this double bottom under the... the cloud, and we're just been churning in between. Not unlike the SPUs, really, right? So we have that there. I think we're good with that. Let's have a look at the 10-year. We talked about that. Remember this. So people get a little bit confused with bonds. Basically, bond price goes up, interest rates go down, and vice versa. So what we've seen on the 10-year on a daily we've seen it break up since this Cajun, and we keep hitting this cloud. We know what that is, right? And so this is our strength, right? So this has been, what's interesting is with the end of the world, it's been steadily going up. And so we've talked about this before with inflation. So with inflation it's just unmanageable right now, right? So, whoops, sorry. So you're seeing this push up. So that tells us that the bond market does not believe it's lasting inflation. They believe either the Fed or the world is going to crush the economy, basically. You see what I mean? So that's what that's telling us from the bond market. We'll see how that works out, but to use that terrible word, it's transitory. So Madavi, you all done and ready to go, mate?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through. So heads up first, we didn't do a lot of index trading today because we're very heavy in stocks. energy, but we did do some. So you can see where NASDAQ closed. We said it was the weakest. It closed right at the low of, it looks like 4 weeks ago, which is the one that broke through a week ago, like that big collapse on Russia. Okay, so let's bring up the daily, and it closed right on the Tenkan. So it's hanging on for dear life, I guess would be a nice way to say it. Okay, do you want to go through it, mate? I got the 60-minute chart up for you.
Yeah. Well, last night, as you can see, that Russian thing happened, whatever, the nuclear thing, like that, we started pounding down. Russia. And then we rebounded when I guess they found out it's not really a nuclear leak, but outside in the
it was just a fire in something, right?
Yeah, there was a fire, and that reactor was shut down. So who knows? That could even been a false flag deal. But anyways, we bounced back. I got in and I got greedy. And so
you greedy? No, never.
Oh, yeah. I thought we might get a couple of leaks out of it or something. You know, not that I wish anything on anybody, but you know, tragedy happens, and if you're there, you might as well make money. You might be able to use it for your cancer treatments.
Wow, that's an interesting spin. Have you been working for Reuters lately or for the White House? I get mixed up.
Yeah. You know, I figured I better make all I can if I'm going to get cancer over here, you know. But anyway, so I got greedy and was position bad coming in, and this market went down to almost to the point where the lows of last night, and I thought we were going to break down.
Oh, I'm listening. I'm just trying to point out on here for you. I guess that's it, right?
Yeah. I think we're going to really break down today and really break through everything. Friday or good day for do that, but it just, you know, if you're trading this NQs, they get down there and then they squeeze you to the other side 100, 200 points like we've been talking about, but in these type of markets has been really severe. So it really traded in a range from the morning and then it ran up, right? And then it just came right back down and a little bit lower. But so it wasn't, you know, so it wasn't that great for me this week. I should have been with mate on the gas and oil.
Yeah, you're stuck over there in that island in California. Down here in Texas, it's all we know, mate. We had our day with Smith Barney yesterday. Not Smith Barney. What was it? What was the gun one? Smith and Weston. I keep calling him Smith Barney. And today was oil. But yeah, it was a good day on oil and gas. So just one thing last night as we were live, we were fortunate enough to be live when all that was going on in Russia or Ukraine, whatever, Belarus, bloody hell. But one thing we said, you trade it because that's how the market reacts. It's what's very important. You don't get emotional about your position. It got down to 08 because you just don't know. Firstly, you don't know how legitimate the news is, and we're in a world of clickbaits and false flags and fake news and all this sort of thing. That you want to trade how the market reacts. That's what matters. You're a trader, and so the caution was that. So basically, as I said at the time, there's two things: either Putin's gone mad and basically set an atom bomb off, you know, for one of the one extreme, or he's trying to attack it, which isn't good. But so that's the nervousness. But at the end of the day, and as we found out, was it a guard's house or something? I forget what it was, something like that. So, but it is war, and you can't react to every little thing. Do you hear me okay, or did I just cut? Do you hear me okay, guys? Is this gone funny again on volume?
I can hear you in Discord.
Now I hear you. Yeah, sorry, Madavi was talking and then it cut off. Anything more on NASDAQ, Madavi? I think he just got called away. So Yeah, so that's a key as far as that goes trading. And that's why as a part of strategy, it's really threefold. One is you have your levels and you try, so when we use Nova Wave, it's a combination of these things, but patterns. Secondly is the sentiment or the herd reaction. And thirdly is your ability as a trader or whatever for putting all those things together. The key is you have a strategy and a system. Okay, so let's move on. I think we've done stocks had everywhere pretty well there. You can see what we've had with congestion in all these markets, basically. Look at all this sideways today. And so that's a extension right there, right? So what we know is this a flag or is it a big one too? So you know your levels either side. You know on a daily it held Cajun up here. Well, actually, it didn't really hold it. It tried 4 times to get over it and broke down. And then we held tanking at the end of the week. Okay, let's have a look at crypto real quick before we get on to energy. Crypto, we'll talk about a market that's full of hype on one hand. Like, they either hate it or they love it, the powers to be. And I think, Radar, you made a good point. It's kind of got to go 10%, then they all go on about it, right? So that's what happened this week. Let's have a look at Bitcoin.
And also, everybody's made a big deal about they think the Russians are using it to escape sanctions. It's not a big enough market for that.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
anybody who's got really money.
Actually, that's a great comment because that's what got. Can we see it on the weekly? I might have to go hourly, but you can see this bar. If you recall, it went nuts one day, like $7,000 or something, wasn't it? So it goes all the way up here on that basis, and it hit the 50 and just slowed down. So have your technical analysis, have your fundamental analysis, have your sentiment analysis. They're all part of it. If anyone's just one, unless they're like really, actually it's all part of it. So I'm always wary of, we're wary of dribblers to start with, but if you just ignore one or the other. I pretty well don't ignore anything and always willing to learn. So that's exactly what Madavi said. So it goes up. Oh, shit, this isn't this big. And then comes sliding down. On an hourly, you can see it probably better. Yeah, so that's that. This is it, right? So, this is all that stuff right there on the... Is that the last day of the month, first day of this month?
So this is also the perfect time for the government to blame it on the Russian and all this stuff to really regulate it, really cramp down on it, really good. So,
yeah, I was thinking about that because they've tried to blame everyone, and it has. So we've had. Look, we all know there's money laundering that going on, but there's also money laundering going on in the US dollar. So they tried that. What was the other thing? There was tax evasion, money laundering. China's banned it. I think India banned it one stage. There's been a bunch of people banned it. And now, I think is Johnny back from...
Yeah, he's right here. He's on the line. He's talking.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. We had Johnny muted because you were sharing some marital bliss earlier. So we didn't think the dribblers wanted to listen, but I think everyone else are like, hey, what's going on?
Nice.
So
working from home.
Yeah. I blame my dogs. So, from a technical point of view, Bitcoin was like absolutely a thing of beauty. Minus 4/8, which remember, if that holds, that's very capitulationary. Is there a word? Capitulation? Capitulation? We're going to create one. Anyway, it bounced all the way to plus 2/8, so it went from extreme oversold to extreme bought. It lost momentum. Count your waves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Real classic. And we've sold off from that. And right now, we're back at 2/8. But this is real money. This is $6,000.
I think Johnny was saying something. What were you saying, Johnny?
Yeah, sorry. You were muted before. Go ahead, Johnny.
No, I think it's really funny how this is all playing out. But, Warren just screaming about all these political, sanctions with Russia and how this whole cryptocurrency thing is a way for them to get around the system. And it seems, or it appears to me, that this whole conflict, so many different facets of it, but it's accomplishing a lot of missions or narratives that the U.S. is,
bifurcation.
It's just a very funny time how you see how Russia has a very, very close relationship with India. Ever since I think it's about the early 90s, they formed an alliance. So I was watching Bloomberg, and it's the alliance. They really side with Russia on everything, and then there's China. And it's funny how those three countries have been the biggest ones trying to regulate or control the cryptocurrency. Then you've got the U.S. that doesn't even know what to do with it, doesn't understand it. So there's a lot of things I think are playing out politically, and we'll see how it all comes together. But those are just interesting things. And I was reading Yahoo Finance today that all the crypto last night on Bloomberg, I was watching. They had a guy from Kraken. They had a couple of different other CEOs from different exchanges. This is like the first time you've seen so many people on Bloomberg from the cryptocurrency exchanges get together, because this is a huge thing to try to stop the transactions of a few individuals. At the end of the day, it seems like it would be easier to use cryptocurrency to isolate people and their movement, and then try to do it with US dollar bills.
Well, what I find interesting with it, so on one hand they say, oh, it's useless, it's not going to work and all that, right? The naysayers. And then the other hand, they're saying, hang on, we got to ban it because it's too good. You know what I mean? So it's like, hang on, which one is it? So, yeah, very good points you're making.
All these things, it says headlines are crypto, Coinbase, Binance, and Kraken all call ban Russian users. So, I mean, that's...
But if you're doing that, aren't you going against the premise of it, or am I missing something?
So the thing is that it's got to go through an exchange, but it doesn't have to necessarily be held in an exchange.
Right.
So it's just like cash. I mean, you don't have to put it in a bank. Keep cash, gold, and everything. So it's just one of those things, but we want to make sure that they always have the ability to control it, I think. So.
Oh, for sure. I think that's the point Madavi's making, unless I'm missing it, that they're using it as an opportunity to try to regulate and control it.
Yeah, him and I were talking about that last night. Yeah,
it looks like
a lot of things.
Whatever.
Perfect storm.
To accomplish all the goals.
Right.
You have the gas, you have the liquid gas, Cruz and a couple of different senators, from North Dakota, or I can't remember which natural gas suppliers. I think the one out of Texas and the one out of
you got Texas and Dakota, North Dakota.
Big
Pennsylvania.
They're pounding the table about Russia because they don't want that pipeline to go in there. They think that they're going to build that pipeline and use it to drive tanks on, roll into Europe. They're
not talking about that. The reason it's it's all because it's about holding Europe to ransom, which that shows you how bad Germany. God, their energy policy. Look, I know Biden and that is shocking, but Germany's another level of just stupidity, right? So that's what that's about. And it's about money as well. It ties
together everything, though. It's about
Bitcoin?
Money, power.
To be honest, I don't think energy people give a shit about Bitcoin, other than...
No. It's not. No. We're talking about power. People in these various empires. It's about control, money, fear they can instill
always
in the people in the region. So it's the same human, thing, elements and factors that are always out there. But this time it's just kind of funny how the players are all coming to the forefront.
Well, I think this time it's also the first time you had a war, like street-to-street fighting live on TV, right? So it's kind of like those video games live. Like, yes, Vietnam, you saw a little bit of it. So you got all that. So you got to a very much desensitized world that doesn't actually realize people are actually dying, like really dying. You got that. Then you got multiple politicians that are in a mess. Just step back a bit. So we talk about opportunity for stuff. Look at Biden, how unpopular he is here. Look at what's his name in England with the hairdo, Boris Yeltsin, right? Not Boris Yeltsin, Boris, whatever his name is. I can't believe it. Boris Johnson.
Oh, Boris.
I'm sounding like I'm as drunk as Boris Yeltsin with that comment. Then you got Emmanuel Macron over in France. All these people are deeply unpopular, right? I mean, and Putin himself is losing a lot of popularity in Russia outside of his little group. So you had all these unpopular people. I mean, I'm not saying the whole world started a war to distract it, but they certainly take advantage of it, which is exactly what you talk about Bitcoin, you know?
So it seems to all be playing out in a narrative that the U.S. is kind of set up in a way. And
the U.S. set it up?
Information.
I don't
the
think
U.S.
so.
has set up everything very nicely where with the Ukraine, its relationship there, the pipeline, what they don't want with that, the whole thing with the cryptocurrency. And I'm not saying anything about our beloved country here, but there's some self-interest that I think is involved on our side.
Hey, there's always self-interest.
And then when I heard about the liquid natural gas that we're sending over to Europe.
You mean LNG?
And how,
yeah.
So, and that's not my game. That's your game. But, you know, when you have the players here in the States that produce it and the most vicious about this whole thing.
Well, in reality, so that's one thing on it. But in reality, so let's take a big back on LNG. So pretty well LNG, the biggest exporter in the world was Qatar up until 2 years ago. Then it became Australia. Indonesia, as you know from your little play on Indo, is one of the other big ones. And then the US was, it wasn't that long ago before they were allowed to start exporting it, right? So anyway, what really kicked it all in was all these ESG policies, particularly in Europe, because they banned coal in England and they banned nuclear power in Germany and coal, I think. So in other words, there wasn't enough wind or renewables to replace it, so they had to get natural gas from somewhere else, right? So Russia didn't have the LNQ. So don't forget, this is in all the political stuff. There is a Nord Stream 1 that exists, right? So this is Nord Stream 2. So it's not as if Russia doesn't supply all this anyway. So it's real easy to misinterpret what's going on with all this, right? And that whole Nord Stream 2 is actually really more involving Germany than anything. Like Gerhard Schroeder is the chairman of all this stuff involved in it all. So there's a lot more to it. But yeah, there's so much misinformation. And Russia's power is in oil more than anything, right? And somehow which could make it a little bit correct what you're saying, because America's still importing Russian oil, believe it or not, right? So with all this going on, if you've noticed when they did the sanction stuff or the SWIFT stuff, that's not for energy, that's not for oil, you know. So there's a lot of little bit of moving parts, but
there's so much to this whole thing, and there's the elements I'd mentioned there's the currencies, there's the oil, and I never really, until I met you and started listening and trading with you, never really realized how powerful, how necessary oil is.
Well, you know me for
how
20 odd years.
Based off it, from the molecules of the pharmaceutical industry to the petrodollar,
it's everywhere.
And the power that we fought over the entire world to secure. It all comes down to, you know, those same basic human factors of control and
energy and food, right?
Power.
So, and I think the market's realizing that now, right?
But this whole thing, you know, when you're trading, you have to look. I just about a week ago saw all this information coming at me that the oil prices, you know, they're not just almost $6 a gallon here in California, but they're going north.
Mm-hmm.
And they're topping highs, and that's be in short supply. So where did I start looking and researching and asking you about where I should put my money? It's because you have to look at those things that happen in the market, and then you start looking at the crypto market. There's more. So right now with Bitcoin, it's gone down, but less people are trading it. There seems to be a slowdown in the velocity of transactions through all the exchanges. So there's a huge ripple effect that this whole conflict is created.
So that fell so much is probably why, right? I'm guessing. I don't know.
So, well,
yeah, there's certainly war's a big thing, and this war happened when you got all these bubbles. So it's even more acute, really, right? So you think we got all these bubbles, massive inflation. So let's pop wheat up double. Let's pop natty up. Dude, what did you say today? What was natty in Europe today, Madavi?
What's that?
What was natty in Europe today? It was 200 or something?
Yeah, the highest ever.
I mean...
Love it.
I love it.
And it could just keep going, too.
In the morning.
Yeah, because they don't have... So they call it the molecules in natural gas. They don't have it. They shut down... what do you call it? All that coal and everything else. They didn't have enough renewables, or you got to have the locations for all this stuff too, wind farms, and you can't just put them anywhere.
Spokesperson and see if you cut them up and warm them up.
Well, what's lucky? We shouldn't laugh. Sorry, I apologise. But what's lucky is winter's almost over, so that's the good thing, and that's probably why that's not going to matter so much. So be careful of being really long. But if the economy picks up, most of it needs energy. It needs energy in factories and all that sort of stuff, right? So these so being as so disconnected as they are from reality, you got politicians going like people like that John Kerry. They have no concept, and all it's doing is aggravating people, making it. So the things that people want to achieve with proper environmental policy, so basically it's pollution originally, all got hurt by money and greed. That's where the money plays are really in my opinion, that sort of thing. Look who benefits from all this. Like on that factor,
the power,
right? Not on the oil and gas, but on the other stuff. I don't even think it's power. I think it's a way
to move all the players around. If you know what you're doing in the game, you can move the people around. For instance, for a while there, Vladimir Putin was kind of getting really cool, had no horse with your shirt off.
Well, I don't know. Like well, maybe to you he was, but I'll give you the tip to anyone in that region he wasn't.
No, I'm saying, but his popularity kind of went up. Russia started, kind of a few years back, started all of a sudden becoming not so much of our, nemesis. And
that's part of the game, right?
Changed that
part of the game.
Yeah. So it's a board, and these pieces are being moved around. One thing we have to say is, lucky we're here where we have the ability to commentary and this game of equities and stock
Game
market
of Thrones,
trading, and not the people that are sitting there freezing without food. My heart goes out to the people and the kids that I see that are trapped in those conditions. It's just terrible. So that's the real thing. I can't believe that this is still happening in today's world. Period.
Well, that's my thought in 2022. So here's another thing. What happens if this happens? Which is going to happen at one stage. So if you just think back to 2008, the credit default swaps, that's what blew up all those banks like the subprime and blew up AIG, etc. And they all got bailed out. So the big question is, who is the other side? Who is the other side of the Russian debt, right? So if the credit default swaps, if they blow up, that's another thing. So it constantly feeds on it, different things, right? That we're not even thinking about. That's just something I just thought about then. But these are all real and affecting financial markets. And that's what I don't get is this constant buy the dip, this disconnect after all that's happening. Is it so desensitized? And so remember we had the Chinese property collapse too. That hasn't been unwound, right? Then we had all the inflation. What else have we got? There's so many other things like that. And massive bubbles like money out there printing. Powell, imagine being Jerome Powell with these incompetent companies, governments, inflation through the roof. He knows that if he pushes it up too much, he's going to trigger all that debt we're talking about, right? So, it's going to be an interesting time, and there's different theories on a lot of it, and if you have any biases towards any of these factors from whatever, like I'm sure if you own a lot of stocks and property, your bias is going to be that ain't going to happen if you're from a certain country or belief, So, and then we're in a world where media is totally manipulated, be it via social media or official, whatever, So that's why we always stress just trade the market, because you don't really know, and you can't change what you can't change, right? But it's be aware of all these possible bifurcations. Last night was a good example, right? We didn't know whether that was true or not true, or the extent of it last night, but we knew the market was breaking down. We knew how they'd react, and little things like that. You just take your piece, Okay, let's talk. I think we've covered that pretty good. And it's something you could debate since that till the second coming, probably. Anyway, let's talk about our stocks. So, our stocks markets, our trades. We all know the strategy. Oh, actually, we should talk about oil before we jump ahead. So, oil has been very nice at trading, absolutely technically perfect. And so is natural gas. And people that doubt that, so be it. There's nothing much I can say about that. So as you know, we've walked you through it. We're pretty clear that this had to be a 3 or a 5 and to trade it off these levels. And we finally hit that 100% move today. Well, did we hit that yesterday? 113.77. That is the retest of the breakdown, and we talked about that. That's on here. I think at the time when this happened, it was like 114 something, whatever it was. Anyway, look where we closed. And so I'm going to look at this a little bit more on the weekend. So we went through 161.8%. So let's see if we got... I'm going to have to play with it, but... We could still be going through some crazy numbers. When we went to 150, we didn't have all this printed money, Johnny and Madawi. Now we have all this more money sloshing in the system. So it could even get more unrealistic to that. Let's hope not, for the sake of the world's economies. As much as the text in me says get ahead with it. Plus 2.8 is 124. We closed over over plus 2.8, over plus 1.8, and over those highs from 2008. We haven't been here since 2008. So that's a powerful move. But see, it's all trading technically. But these are violent moves. You can't just stay long, right? You can, I guess, in hindsight. But these things can move $10 against you. If you're trading at WTI, it's $1,000 a contract, $1. So it's a $10,000 move backwards and forwards. Was that yesterday or the day before, Madab? When that Iranian deal first dropped? Can't remember now. But it moved $10 down and $10 up.
Yeah, that was today, right?
No, there was one on it today, but I think there was... I guess we'll look at the daily, it'll show us. That's the easy answer, right? Oh. Yeah, so it was yesterday. So it goes up to 116 yesterday, falls to 106, rockets all the way back to 114. But again, this is climbing waves, right? And one thing I caution about, like I had a few people text me, they wanted to sell puts 2 days ago on oil because the vol was so high. I wouldn't do that because you just don't know. Bang, it falls $10. So it depends who they are, but if they've got to cover that delta or whatever, right? Today...
You remember today you said that...
Yeah, so that's this one today. So this is Brent. This is it. So it's trading to 120. There's a rumor that Russia's going to... So the Russian guy, whatever it was, I forget, where'd we see that? Anyway, that it ended up hitting the market, that the Russians and again a push for the Iranian deal, which was we were told was going to happen already, right? 72 hours. So that fell. I'm guessing that's here. So this is Brent 116 to 108, and then it rallied up from that up to close all the way up. So these are violent moves. These are $10 moves. I think that's the one. Or maybe actually, no, I beg your pardon. We'll show it up. This I know where it is. Sorry. Let's bring up a 5-minute chart. Yeah, so that's this one here, I believe.
And that was early in the morning.
Yeah. So this is all mess. And then we rallied just all day off it, remember?
Yeah, but you remember he said, hey, they've been trying to negotiate this for 10 months now. They say every week, next week, next week.
Yeah. Well, actually, give us your insight, because you have a really good reading on this, of how this has all come out in the last few weeks.
Yeah. So they basically scrapped them and let them suffer some more. Their thoughts is until they needed them. Now they really need them, so they got to give a lot of incentives to get the deal done.
Yeah, 100%.
Iran wanted to come in. He thought when Biden comes in, he was just going to come back in and do everything. But then he went to the like you want to renegotiate and put in these term lines. Basically, he wanted to neuter them so he get bombed on.
Right, do a new deal. Kind of Well, actually, that's an interesting point, because Biden was I could be a little bit off on the years, but Biden was the vice president when all the same stuff happened with Russia and the Ukraine, right? So the neuter's a good word. You're probably right on all that. Well, let's look at gas now, because that's one that's... So remember, this is traded out very choppy, but basically the way you trade this, because this can do a lot of damage on weather reports and that, but we've got, as Badawi mentioned, the highest ever on European natural gas. Now, that isn't this contract, but it does affect us. Johnny talking about liquid, which is LNG, they're buying from here. So that's Henry Hub, that comes out of Sabine, so that's in this contract. That's why we talked about yesterday, why this is bid over the other basis points. So look what we did. Yeah, it's domestic, but we're flogging that. We're flogging that stuff around the world. India's a big buyer of this, by the way.
No, there's one element left. If you get it, you'll have like the triple fund that they call it. That means it was everything that could go wrong went wrong. If we get the coldest storm coming through for like a month.
Oh yeah, we had that. Remember? Yeah.
Yeah, but another one.
Well, now we're March, so.
Right now, if you get a really cold storm, like the last storm of the week before.
Well, think about it another way. What happens during this changeover period over the next 6 weeks, and then we get really blistering heat, right?
Oh man, they're gonna.
So that's the same thing, right? So we get over the shoulder period, and then we go into the summer. So it's going to be the same thing if they haven't set this up.
Summer will be okay, but if we get a really cold front for like the last couple of weeks of summer before spring starts, winter before spring starts, that would be like.
Oh, if it happened now, yeah, particularly in Europe. Well, I guess we're talking as Texans and Californians, so it ain't going to happen in our part, but up north, yeah.
Yeah, they're cold. They get cold up there.
They got to harden up.
British, yeah, they'll love it.
Price of wool's going to go up, but so look to a technical point of view. The punters, you took their profit. Cajun, this is our trade anyway. Tenkin, spit of Cajun. You go to the daily, same thing. See what we're testing the break. So all this is measured moves, which tells you it's rational. I'm not saying oil's rational. We're talking about natural gas. Whoever thought natural gas would be rational? But so that's the other things you want to watch on that. So let's move on to I think we covered. All right, we've got to look at gold too. Sorry, mate.
So mate, if you live in California, gas prices are already like almost at $6, $7, right?
For gasoline,
so
yeah.
That could be what broke the camel's back, and the people who just really, because we pay like $2, $3 in taxes extra.
So that'll be really what pushes. They'll get out in the street to really get rid of all
Yeah,
those
yeah,
taxes.
well, that's true. And you know what? They'll blame the oil companies.
They actually have a name for it because people who have to drive to and from work because they bought houses way out in the boondocks and they have to drive 60 miles each way here in California.
Yeah.
There it's going to be, I can't remember, it was a catchy phrase, but it's kind of like energy crippled. They're going to be like gas crippled. They won't be able to afford the gas for their cars to go to and from work because it will cost them too much money. It's how they're saying high the gas prices could go, which I don't know if that's true or not.
Transportation out in California sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I was complaining to these two guys yesterday. I filled up at 3.02 a gallon. I didn't get a good response from them, but anyway. Sorry. Oh boy. Okay, so let's look at commodities. So we've had a couple of good plays here. The first one, and it's my man Madavi's favourite play. He's been accumulating gold for quite a number here inside this big technical triangle. This is a daily we got blown up. We didn't jump into here on the first break. We did half and then we added when it held this break. From this point, and this is how long ago? This is like just over a week, right? 2 weeks maybe. We've accelerated to up to 7/8. And if you look where that is, 8/8 is the magical 2000. And then it gets over there, that would become very much a psychological level, right? I would imagine. So that's been a steady climb, which means there's a lot of people kind of think, oh, gold, what do they call it? The old asset or something. But it's been steadily going up. So if you look at a lot of the Bitcoin people, we looked at Bitcoin earlier, how it had been falling off. This has just been going up. So I guess old and steady, right, Madavi?
Oh yeah, let me tell you, if it's worked for anything that's worked for over 10,000 years, I mean, you probably want to stick with that because there isn't much that lasts 10,000 years besides maybe dinosaur bones.
Well, that'd be the oil. That's true, oil and gold. There you go.
Another instrument that's been there since the beginning of like civilization when they started building towns and everything, and it's still around today. Doom and buggy's gone. Horseback is there. You doing it fun, but nothing is really used anymore like that.
No, 100%. And what's funny is, I'm certainly not a gold bug, but we all recognise its value. But the technical part we knew, and psychologically, if it breaks, is because, well, let's look at a weekly. If I go this to weekly, it makes more sense. This had been going sideways since July of 2020, just building all this energy. Look how long that is, guys. So that means for every buyer, there's a seller, right? Because a lot of this is just stored. It's not used in industry, etc., like others. So this becomes very powerful. If it gets over this high, and see how we label it a 5 of 5 or a 1 of 5. So if this is just a 2, and it becomes where, well, I'll put it another way. If the people that have been buying Bitcoin to hide their money or store, just say for whatever reason, on Bitcoin anymore, like the reason Johnny and Madavi saying about regulation and manipulation, that's the sort of thing that can make this really fly, right? I'm not saying it will or won't. We're just looking at the possibilities.
Yeah. I mean, hey, check out that picture Johnny sent you.
Yeah, I just saw it. 609. Is that francs or dollars? I don't have francs anymore, do they? Is that whatever? Pesos.
They sell you like $8-10 last time I was there. Now I think like the liter's like $20.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that. So silver, we're just talking about gold. Silver finally broke and closed over that channel. So that's a positive for gold as well. Unless, obviously, if they do the gold-silver thing, but that's very unlikely, given this broke up. So the big trade we've been talking about is copper. So copper finally broke. If you remember, we've been watching this for a while. We have free McMahon on this. And we actually sold calls against him, got called away this week. So then that becomes a new trade. But so that's a good way to protect risk. Obviously, in hindsight, I wish I never sold the calls. You could have made a few more bucks. Point is, this is an industrial metal. It closed above this high. Okay? So FCX is just a really good way to trade it, which is both Johnny and I had that trade on. But on this basis, right, we're not buying it here. We're buying it here. So just beware of all. I mean, how many beware the dribbler comments do we got to make? But you have a game plan well and behave. Like for energy and for foodstuffs, same pattern. We've been watching this for a year or so. We just keep going up on soybeans, right, and on wheat and everything else. But if trading them and talking about it on a news comment or a Twitter or a newsletter is one thing. Actually being in it's a different thing. So these are very violent moves. That's corn. We saw wheat today, right? What's that? That seems to be not. And then hang on. Well, actually, Alcoa. That's aluminium or aluminum. That's one I sold too early, Madavi. Look at that.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it's
you remember why gold is also taken down too. You got all these instruments and stuff that short gold. So the United States does not want gold to break up any more higher. It's not good for their what they're doing. So that's another reason why gold's always stayed down. There's a lot of pressure shorting it.
Yeah, a lot of banks have made their money, but actually that's even more so on silver, isn't it? Where they make that monthly roll.
No, because if gold breaks out high, you're going to give Russia a lot of money, a lot of these other countries.
Oh, countries that have it? I see what you mean. Yeah,
like they used
it's an alternative currency.
So it's not what they want, and plus you'll drive these adversaries.
So what are you telling us, that gold's not going to go up?
I say it tends to short it, keep it down. That's always kept pressure.
Oh, there, but eventually, potentially, it can break up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always done it so anytime it's about to break up, it does it so it keeps it down. It's not good for them.
Yeah, 100%. So let's look at this aluminium. So I got out. So I mean, bear in mind we were in this for a long time, a lot lower, but still, it is annoying on one hand getting out early, but it's better to get out early rather than late. Always remember that if you're a trader. What was the other one we were going to look at? Soybeans, right? So this is what I'm talking about with these futures. These are violent. So it's easy to, and that's why I just looked at the aluminium one just before, aluminum, Alcoa. This one here traded at 1760. By the end of the week, it closed at 1560, then back up. So I don't trade this, to be clear. So, but we do play around with them on ETFs and stuff like that, which Johnny, what was that one? Wheat, WEAT for wheat. And there is a corn for corn, which the advantage for them and the way to trade them, here's a trade that has worked so far. It's probably not always going to work as it becomes more mainstream. But when the futures gets limit up or limit down, they tend to keep going, and so you can jump on for a little bit. Okay, let's talk about the stocks we did today individually. So as I said, we basically got two key parts of the strategy. I've got to find them first. It's on that other screen. Outside of futures, obviously we do a lot on that. So we have the energy length, as you know, for futures. We trade that for futures, options, and on oil and natural gas, pretty much. We also have very involved in the energy sector. So one of our good ones has been Occidental, and a lot of these are very straightforward trades, really. And I think we've been through this. Occidental is actually a great trader. You can scalp it, trade it around a bit, right? So look at this move today on Occidental. So we picked up this, those listening to the podcast last week at 38.60 because it had been, so we shorted it, if you remember, and we picked it up Monday because that had earnings. It actually increased their dividend and also increased their buyback. This pop where we added on was when they were paying back debt, remember? At cheap rates or whatever. Then oil, you got it. I think a lot of what happened, particularly in this name, was there was a lot of calls sold out of the money because vol was so high and earnings had come out. The same thing happened on Chevron and Exxon and obviously other names. But they're your big three, right? So remember today, we looked at selling puts on it, but the vol wasn't crazy high. But it was high on, calls, right? So there's actually a call skew at one point there, which is very unusual. That was telling us that, call it a gamma squeeze perhaps, but really it's just following normal. That might have just helped it. But do you remember that, Johnny, when we were looking at like 52 to sell some calls, potentially, and then I didn't like it just from, I was bullish oil. But look how fast that went. So when you're selling calls and puts, make sure you have a plan and know your risk. And remember, if anyone that saw GME or a lot of those kind of plays, car was another one, the site, it can go anywhere. I'm not saying Oxy's going to do that, but just beware of that. But that was a play like that. If you've sold a bunch of stock, say you're in a fund and you've sold Oxy, do you want to hold it? And it's Friday, so you thought you'd survive it. They probably ought to buy the stock back because they've got to hold it, right? So that explains some of these plays. But these are great traders, particularly off, this was a little pennant. Off that was 2/8. This is a solid 3/8 move. That's a 2 hour. If we go 15 minutes, you can see how it does these sideways pops. And you can do these little short trades as long as you know what you're doing, right? Who else did? Apache's another really good trader. So this isn't a major. So you got Oxy, Chevron, and Exxon, and then in Europe you got Shell and BP, which have their own issues, obviously, particularly BP. So anyway, Apache, these are good stocks to trade. You look for these pennants. This is 3 minutes. You look for these little pennants, and then you go with them either way, right? And so, as I've said before, don't just buy and hold this stuff, right? Anything. Look at these moves. See this? It's not as easy as... So outsiders that don't trade, your dribblers and stuff, you got to have a strategy. You got to know what you're doing. These are big moves. And that's why we take profit off the table, okay? It's one thing to say, I wish I held it for here. What if you held it here and you're panning out here? You don't know unless you're in it, right? Are we too hard on the dribblers?
No.
Probably not hard enough, right? So here's another little
Everybody's
good one.
so beat up. It's been a rough trading week.
It's been a fantastic week. You kidding?
Oh, it's been rough because it's like so much going on.
Oh, yeah, but
a lot of thinking.
Rough means you lose, I thought. It's been a lot of work, a lot of thinking.
The work, there you go.
But it's followed our strategy perfectly. That's why you have a strategy and you put it ahead months in advance, weeks, days. You know what you're doing, right? And you don't wait. This is what killed all the dribblers, all those people on Twitters and that all they thought the market go up forever. This is different, printing money. They'd buy all that crap like the upstarts and all those stocks, right? We could go on ad nauseum. And then it's the market's fault or it's Powell's fault. No, really, if you're so goddamn smart, excuse the French if that's bad, but if you're so smart, sorry, Australian slips out sometimes, how were you not aware of it? And plenty of people are telling you, right? Anyway, there's some people I can think of. But anyway, we're driving up. EQT is another good one. So we did this one, added to it today, the other day, because a lot of these companies are just not oil. They're oil and gas, right? And don't forget that. But also you've got activity. Production has to be replaced or different replenished, however you want to put it. So Baker Hughes, as well. Halliburton, Schlumberger, all this as well, right? So there's lots of parts in this. But as always, greed. So you then get the greed end of the fact, and these things get overbought. So you make sure you take your profit. Or do optionality, however you want to do it. This is another good play that we've been liking for a while. Our two big plays as far as drilling goes, those followings has been Rig, which is Transocean, which is the biggest offshore driller in the world, run by some very smart people, and they've survived through all that high oil and all that, low oil. So a lot of the others are gone, right? So there's Diamond and all those you may remember. So Atwood's another one. They're all gone, basically. So this play, why? Because all of a sudden, oil's over $100. People, again, look for different places to drill, plus their break-evens offshore. This is a company that's got on board a lot of debt. So the thing will be is when they start making money, do they repay it? I believe they've already done a lot of secondaries and stuff like that. The other one in this space is, so these have all been, obviously we've done quite good on them. So PTEN is one of our favourites, which is a domestic driller. And again, another one. So remember, we're not buying them here. We're in them. We've been in them for a while, and we now trade them. So for example, as when you're long something, and it hits these levels, you short it, which basically makes you break even. You can go short and sell more, of course, but it keeps you in control. So this P10 was a great options play because you could buy the calls for basically nothing. And here we are at 15.50. So some of this would have been that, right? And if you look at these daily, look at this, almost 2/8. But look where it's come from. Look at these congestion patterns at break. So some of these are slow and don't suit the punter and dribbler. That's probably why they're dribbling right now, right? So we can go on more with them, but let's talk about dribbler. That's a good cue for this. These are some good dribblers that we made money on. In some of these you know already, but these are some of our top 12, 30 dozen dribblers. So JMIA is one that we've had, which he added to yesterday, right? Isn't this one I showed at the close yesterday, I believe? So this is known as the African Amazon. So this was a IPO a few years ago. It got a big short squeeze. And so people buy these just because they want short squeeze. Now, the dribblers just keep buying them. The reality is, this was just perfect. And then, when you see these 52-week lows, what I like to do is bang them because it then hits up on the sky, what do you call them? Those, things that call out the high lows, the screeners. So they're good for this one was good for 40 cents or so. So down here. So the dribbler keeps buying this, because averaging. So you got to be careful when you do that, obviously. But these are just the ones that are in. This is another one of ours, open. I got out of this one a bit early, Madavi. Look at that. It held up. I covered this at around 7. Then it just crap. But all these things don't make money. Well, not all of them, but most of what we're talking about don't make money, need money, have a big guy basically selling them, which is this has been one of our most rewarding dribblers, wouldn't you think, Madavi, Palantir?
Yeah, that's
So we got, as you said, there's quite a few of us have big shorts on this over time. Some big funds we know and stuff. It's the gift that keeps giving, basically. So you take your profit. It's got enough dribblers so when you see a stock that everyone tries to push and in denial of what's happened, they come under that category. So you look, and again, you're doing it all technically because remember, if you get enough dribblers, they can get some good short squeezes going. But once the market becomes more rational, but so this has been steady, and look what the reason we added to that yesterday. It failed at Tankin, And so you take your two quick dollar on stuff like this, right? But overall, that's just working its way down. What was the other ones we did? Oh, yeah, this is one of our, so some of these dribblers, here's another one, Task. So a lot of them, they have because obviously when tech and that's not favourite, it becomes self-filling. That's part of it. You don't just short something because you don't like it. There's got to be a plan to it all, right? That's why we call them, and we've shared many a time the category, how we come up with this. This is one we've been short for quite a while, since last November, but it got pounded. You can see how you get these little moves out of them, and they're like $3-4 on this name, right? So from a bull point of view, it held up, but we just took profit. It held at the, the tanker and so on. But you can see how they just worked their way down. This is one of the better ones. This one's only lost half its value. What else have we got? Path. Anyone I'm missing? Feel free to mention. We traded so much this week, man. So Path's another one of my favourite dribblers.
IMPP.
Oh, yeah. So let's bring that up in a sec. So I just want a few more of our dribbler dozen, because we did mention in Twitter we're going to go update them. So Path's one that we're short. It's pretty well as soon as we could. This was an IPO. Remember when this one came out, Johnny? We made money on the long, and then the more we found out about it, the more it got into that. So that's now over half its value. So that's been a good one. I think there was one more. Path penalty. So that's it. So, okay, let's look at some of the ones we did today. IMPP, right? So this is one we watch. So sometimes we just have as you know, our basis is futures, oil and gas, right? So, but we also, there's a couple of really good trading rooms out there that we follow, that it is, that not only trade this stuff, but they trade SPY and all that. So they're legitimate. But this is one they've been watching for, a couple of weeks, right? Well, this one then went sideways and broke up. So this is called Imperial Petroleum. But when we looked at it, I think it was a shipping company, isn't it? But so machines don't care about that. Petroleum. The dribblers don't even bother to do their homework. And remember, they're just following. So, but look what it did. So it did all this consolidation. This is just today. We don't need to go back. And then it's been breaking up these little waves, these little patterns. But see, it held this Cajun all the way up till just here, and it's going sideways. And then we'll see what it does here. But these are good moves. This is one, you bought the break, I think, at 320, right? We played with it, and then look at these moves. So these are clinical moves. So there's less and less people trading these because it's a bear market, the way it's all coming down. And don't get caught up on the definition of bulls and bears. Anyone goes on, they're just having a wank, right? So, as we said, there's multiple bulls and bears within it. It's just the way it's trading, the sentiment and all that. I get all the definitions of all that. That's all put out by stockbrokers to try and keep you not to sell your stock as long as possible. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, right? So this is a nice one. Look at this flag. What was the other one we traded after hours for a second? Which one?
I know.
It was like INVA or something. So anyway, the moral is keep your eye on all these. Like Mullen was I forgot about that. That was our trade of the week. That was beautiful. So this gives you an idea of how stock markets work. So we talked about in a bigger picture Palantir, right? So how about this? And it's all happened this week. Do I got to go daily? I'm hoping it shows over here. Yeah. So this is one that, for those familiar with it, was one of those EV darlings. It was a SPAC and all that. So this got all the way down to 20, it looks like, from way up there. So we're watching this, and it came up on some scanners and some blokes we know. Around 50 cents, they said, hey, mate, look at all this volume, right? It's like insane out of nothing. So that's what we look for. We also knew there's massive shorts on it, and it was a hot EV at one stage. It broke this 4-hour tank in it, and that's when, remember, I went real long on it? And it's cheap, right? So your downside was here, basically. Then... And there's some big guys who were short, were covering, because they see the volume. That's what a lot of this volume was. Look at this volume down here. They did have earnings here. I can't say I looked at it. I just knew the stock had done it. Then it comes out with bullish news. So we're long here, bullish news, because it's something to do with one of their batteries. It pushes it up to 140. Actually got up here to 220. Well, excuse the French. I got out early. That's right. Remember that? And it went up. Then we said on the podcast, we had it, we'd exit it. But this is a prime example of something that's probably going to do a secondary, right? Remember that one? And lo and behold, they did it. What was bizarre, this is where we got lucky on this one. You couldn't short it when it came out. So every hedge fund out there went yours, yours, yours. But the next day you could short it. And so we were able to get a lot short. And I actually got out a lot of this too early. But, we still made good money. Which was a bad rookie mistake, really. Sometimes you just overthink it. Because you knew it was crap. It had come from that. Then you look at the volume, a lot of shorts had got out, and then they just put it back on. But you look at this volume bar, it's telling a lot of people still long this. So we'll see what they come out of that secondary. Has any of us been watching this? Do we know if they came up with a price yet? So that'll tell you whether there's going to be one more thing. But you'll learn a lot just studying what that stock did for other things. Anything else, guys?
Oh, that's it.
So we got through jobs. So next week we move on to a new week. We're going to go into the, what do you call it? The quiet period where the Fed people aren't allowed to talk for the Fed next meeting. Obviously, the weekend's going to be all about oil and gas, Ukraine, what else? Earnings season's, most of it's gone, I believe. Let me see if anyone sent me anything. There's always earnings, yes, that's true. So next week, we got the trade balance out on Tuesday, consumer credit on Monday, the EIA's out every Wednesday, that'll be watched for oil, for Thursday for Natty. Treasury budget's out next week, that'll be good for a laugh. Consumer sentiment's out next Friday. Okay, so that's about it. If you're Australian, shocking news today with Shane Warne being found dead at 52. He's like a legend. For those in America, he'd be like, if you want to compare him to the great pitcher, he was a pitcher, a bowler, which is like a pitcher. So he's like a Babe Ruth. He's a character as well. And in Australia, right, when they got all the floods, those being aware what's going on in Queensland, Northern New South Wales, a lot of bad stuff going on there. So that's a shock to the system. And the night before, Rod Marsh passed away too, so he's a legend too of that game. So RIP those two, and thoughts for all you Aussies that Australia's a very mad sports country, so it's a big deal over there. Anything else, guys? Any words of wisdom?
No. Wasn't that guy died of a heart attack, right?
Yeah, he died of a heart attack at 52. He was a player, so he was in Thailand, so in a hotel.
See that text message I just sent to you? I sent you a text message about gasoline prices. Maybe that had something to do with him.
Gasoline prices?
Yeah, I text you.
Where'd you text me? I don't see it. You
Can I see a
sent,
test? Did you see what I sent to you, Madonna?
you sent me the high oil price, gas Chevron.
Yeah, the Chevron. Did you see the little caption above it?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was my feeling, but I don't want to say that, right? But anyway. Okay, on that note, everyone, have a great weekend. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your friends. Enjoy your dogs and cats and all that stuff. But seriously, cherish the moment. Think how lucky you are in not being in a war zone and all that, and being able to buy food and buy petrol at $3 a gallon. How good's that? Anyway, see you. Make sure you like us, subscribe to us, share it if you like it. Hit us up if you got any interest. And we will see you next week.